Aloha all! It's Wednesday, and that means it's news day. Ahoy, me mateys! The DAS crew is once again taken to the high seas to bring you tales from the briny deep. Stories abound about the legendary AI. They say the AI can grant you unbound wealth, disastrous ruin, or even wisdom Odin himself couldn't obtain. But worry not, matey. The crew has dug deep and found the truth of it. You won't be hornswoggled on our watch. Here just be some of the tales you'll be regaled with this fine morn. The lords and ladies of the U.S. Senate have seemed to struck through plans not to regulate the AI. Some scallywags want to make the AI pay for all the scraping of barnacles off the web. And looks like our Viking brethren, the Danes, have put forth a plan to copyright your face. These stories and more on today's show. Today I'm joined by Beth and Andy, and I am Junmi. Thank you all for joining us, and this is the Daily AI Show. If you haven't already,
were you a theater major or were you a technical major?
I was a drama kid, yes. um, so if you haven't already, please click the bell, like, subscribe, and if you want, also sign up for our newsletter at thedailyAIshow.com. All right, so let's open up with an easy story and a simple one. A nice little highlight for Amazon. Apparently, they have deployed their 1 millionth robot. Amazon extensively uses robots for their warehouse inventory management, moving around a lot of product, things like that. And they just released their 1 millionth one. But what is interesting about this story is they created a model specifically for logistics, inventory, warehouse management robots. So they built a model to run all of those robots. And that is what they're deploying in their warehouses now. But they have released the model for others to use as well. So I thought that story was a nice little opener after that bit of a breathtaker intro there. All right. Andy, what is your burning passion story this morning?
Okay, I'm going to go deep on a dive around the news that Meta launched MSL, Meta Superintelligence Labs, and the story behind how they did poaching raids on AI top talent from OpenAI and Google and some other key players in order to form this thing, and why they had to do that. Because, on the surface, we might think, well, Meta's doing fine. They've got, llama models and they have the glasses and they're a player in AI, though they're not one of the leading research labs. Well, they need to make a change. Why? Because their Llama 4 release was, let's say, deficient and illustrated some serious problems with the internal pipeline of development at Meta. So first, excuse me, the top line is that MSL, Meta Superintelligence Labs, is now a thing. And the way that was formed at the top of that is, Meta acquired Scale AI, partly to get their new chief AI officer over MSL. That's Alexander Wang. But he's also joined by Nat Friedman and Daniel Gross. These two guys are major players, and some commentators have said, why would these guys be underneath this young guy, Alexander Wang? Because these guys are grandfathers by comparison in the world of AI. So Nat Friedman was formerly the CEO of Microsoft GitHub. And before that, MIT and a lifetime of open source development. And he's basically a guru in the world of open source. And then Daniel Gross was the CEO, most recently the CEO of Ilya Sutskever's Safe Superintelligence, which is another major, still behind the scenes to some degree, player out there that may arrive at superintelligence even before the major players like OpenAI and Google do. Okay. Now, Friedman and Gross were partners in a joint venture called NFDG. It's a venture capital fund that is a major, prominent VC in the world of AI. They have investments in SSI, Safe Superintelligence, because of course Daniel's there, in Perplexity, in Character AI, and 11 Labs, among many others that haven't reached that level of prominence. So now you've got these two guys, Friedman and Gross, deep experience in open source software and a background in AI and machine learning on Gross's side. And they're influential voices, and they're, along with Alexander Wang, at the top of this thing. But in addition, Meta poached from OpenAI the following list of players who are really instrumental in the accomplishments of OpenAI's models. Trapit Bansal pioneered RL, reinforcement learning, on chain of thought with O1. Shuchao Bi was the co-creator of GPT-4o voice. Huiwen Chang was the co-creator of GPT-4o's image generation. And Shengjia Zhao, co-creator of ChatGPT, GPT-4, and all the mini models. Then, not having just raided OpenAI, Meta went after Google, and they hired Jack Ray, who was the pre-training tech lead for Gemini 2.5. And you'll understand why pre-training skills are really relevant to what Meta is attempting to redress in this raiding that's going on. And the other person is Pei Sun, who was the post-training lead for Gemini. And they also got from Anthropic a key inference lead, person, Joel Pobar. Okay, why did this have to happen? This is in response to fundamental problems in the Llama 4 Maverick development and deployment. Meta's newest model is underperforming relative to their investment in GPUs and pre-training. Is positioned as Meta's flagship model, but it scored poorly across critical evaluation metrics, particularly in reasoning and coding, which are key areas of application for competitiveness in the world of AI. Its reasoning score is only 44, placing it nearly 50% below top-tier models like Gemini 2.5 Pro. Its coding performance was just 37, poor, unacceptable for enterprise deployment, which is what they would hope to be able to apply, with their open source model in enterprise. And this places Llama 4's coding capabilities closer to early 2024 beta models. And why is this so embarrassing? Well, first of all, Artificial Analysis, which is an independent benchmarking platform, gave Llama 4 Maverick an intelligence index of only 51, placing it well below expectations for a model of that size and computational requirement. Okay, and what did they do to mess up this training? Well, I'm not sure they know yet, but they're hoping that these fixers are going to come in and fix it, because they invested a huge amount in compute with minimal returns on this new release. Approximately 160,000 GPUs were used for its training, a 10x increase over Llama 3. And they trained Llama 4 on a cluster almost 50 times bigger than was used for DeepSeek v3, yet achieved inferior results. So this is a fundamental failure of AI in compute efficiency and raises questions about their training methodologies. There's also there's some buzz around the fact that there was a Reddit post from an anonymous employee who resigned, requested their name be removed from Llama 4's technical documentation, and alleged that leadership proposed blending test sets from various benchmarks in the post-training process. Why would they do that? They're basically giving the results of the tests to the model to artificially inflate performance metrics. And the post also mentioned that Meta's VP of AI, that's Joelle Pineau, announced her resignation in April after 8 years with the company in the midst of all of these failures within. And then in addition, 11 of 14 original Llama authors left the company, many joining competitors like Mistral. So there's a brain drain that happened. There's an embarrassing release that illustrated to the world of evaluators out there that Meta's training pipeline was ineffective despite the huge investment in GPUs and effort. And that brain drain had to be offset. And so now they've paid hundreds of millions of dollars in promised compensation to buy these fixers. There's the story.
Very cool. So
Yeah.
if you want like a philosophical approach to that, that was Monday's show, in terms of like, are we now in the like poaching? What is the poaching happening? Why is it happening? And there are a couple more poaching things that came out recently. Cursor, the people behind Cursor pulled from Anthropic, right? Pulled two key people from Anthropic who were a part of Anthropic's code development. And I swear there were others, but yes, I think we're definitely in the like, well, we don't have releases, but we are absolutely going to like move the chess pieces around the board, right?
Right. It's a free agent world now. Until the next batch of AI engineers really come into their own, that's I think we're going to see a lot more of this. There might just be a bidding war just to see, okay, I need you for 12 months, that kind of thing, and everything's just under contract at that point. But
Well, alongside the poaching, there's also the possibility of mergers and acquisitions.
Sure.
And in fact, Meta is reputed to have attempted to acquire Ilya Sutskever's company, SSI, as a way of bringing in that brain trust that's necessary to correct their problems. But
Right.
Ilya didn't do it. But of course, they got the other fellow from SSI, the CEO,
Right.
who's also a major thought leader there.
Yeah. Now, the one thing I wanted to point out before we move on is that this also highlights that you can't just throw more compute at at model development and it equals better model. Each stage of development does require a fine-tooth comb and a fine eye to make sure that all of those results compound once you do the compute. But they seem to have just thrown a bunch of compute at it and hadn't done the foundational work for their foundational AI, and they didn't get good results.
And now we're going to find out if you can throw compute and a bunch of money at people who did projects in a variety of other places, in a variety of other departments, and see if that generates your
Right.
your great model. And but like the jury's out on that. I'm not saying it won't. To a certain extent, that might have been XAI's Grok play as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Put people in a room with a crap ton of compute and let's see.
Yeah.
And just in the chat right now, Greg Walters said, and then there's Apple. And so there's actually a weave off of this whole question of how does a company that's behind and not really making the marks, how does it get back on track and catch up?
Right.
And Apple, we talked about last week, considering acquiring Perplexity in order to do that. We explained why that was such a great idea. Well, now this week, the news is that Apple is recalibrating its strategy, shifting from internal development or acquisition to selective services integration. And the company's reportedly in advanced discussions to license large language models from OpenAI and Anthropic to power an upgraded Siri.
Yeah.
Right. And they're even talking about them, both OpenAI and Anthropic, to develop a version that will run on their data centers, their hardware and stuff like that. So that might be one of the ways that they get around Apple's pro privacy or part of their branding and all of those kinds of things.
Yeah, good
So
points.
so Beth, what is your story of burning passion?
Okay, so I have a variety of burning passions. Let's go with so the weave from Apple bringing that in-house. I'm going to say the Department of Defense has brought stuff in-house too. We've talked about that. And that's US government. Now we go to US Senate. Catch my weave here. They voted 99-1 to strip the 10-year moratorium on state level AI regulations from the ominous budget bill. The ominous budget bill did pass the Senate, but the version that passed the Senate, while in my opinion horrific, it does not include the state level AI regulation moratorium. And it matters because big tech was like seeming to run this, right? Like, absolutely, this is going to go through because there's a ton of things that's going to be included in that. But states retain the ability to experiment and regulate AI on things like data privacy, deep fakes, automated decision making. We've talked about other people reporting in the past. New York has done some things, right, in terms of breaking, in terms of AI deepfake in New York, right? Like if it can be identified as like a affecting New Yorkers and even being made in New York. New York has laws about that, right? And what we're watching for is whether state laws will evolve without federal constraints. Specifically, California, Colorado, and Utah seem to be big players in this right now. Or whether there's a federal AI framework that gets developed and supported. So those are that's my story. Who's got to weave off that?
I do actually. It's on the privacy side a little bit. So you're talking about deepfakes coming out, or some AI regulation coming out of New York and things like that. Well, Denmark has proposed something that I love to see. I hope it goes over in Europe really well, and maybe influences on our side of the pond as well. But they proposed laws to give you copyright over your likeness, your face, your body, basic biometrics kind of things, and that you will have a copyright over all of those features. So using that as the premise, that will protect you from, or you have a legal course to take if things like deepfakes come out, and use your attributes, so to speak. This is a much better level of protection, I think, as it kind of identifies this more as a right, like a data right to your inherentness. It's not where I think we need to go, in the long term, but it's a great step forward, and I love that they propose this, and I hope they just keep going.
I thought of you when I read it because I was like, "Oh, Jumi's gonna be really excited," because the assumption is you own yourself. Of course you do.
Yeah. And now let's put it on paper, so you don't have to prove it. It just is. Yeah. So so I'm really excited about this story. I'm gonna want to follow it and see. Hopefully it spreads like wildfire.
Nice.
All right. And then on a slight weave, because we're talking about privacy. Apparently, a few days ago, Facebook started rolling out Meta AI requests to everybody, saying, "Oh, can we look at all of your photos in your camera roll? No, not even the ones that you're sharing, just the ones that are in your camera roll." And a lot of people were weirded out by this, because when you look at their terms and agreement, it's, we can kind of just scrape this for whatever we want. Don't worry, we won't show them, but but you'll give us access, and that access terms are like timelines and stuff like that are a little gray. So people not sure. It's like, oh, if I give you one-time access, does that mean, because it says periodically or timely or these kinds of words? So yeah, when I read the story, I was taken aback a little bit. It's like, oh, that's pretty blatant data scraping of all of your personal photos and images and things like that. So keep an eye out, everyone. We're going to see more and more of this with various slick TOS language.
Right.
I have a weave with respect to scraping.
Okay.
All right. One of the big issues that has surfaced is the massive disruption of paywall-based subscription and/or information access. All the lawsuits against the AI training companies that have scraped the web and used actually pirated resources in some cases, and have acquired copyrighted data and/or publications and put them in. Well, then you add to that the discussions that we've had about agents and the eventual role of agents that basically disintermediates any of the people who are trying to protect their data, because the agent can just go out there and collect that data and bring it back to you. So you don't even need Google anymore. Google, won't, be working with their advertising model anymore, because no longer is the search engine and the index the interface that can collect rents, in effect, and pay the provider of the information. Well, there's a big company called Cloudflare, which is a CDN, or a content delivery network. And if you're a user of Cloudflare, that gives you a big advantage as a publisher of information, content, data, etc., because it basically, that distribution network has servers all around the world, and it can place your data from your website. It basically takes that data and puts it on servers that are closer to the people making the queries. That reduces latency, and it provides a high level of reliability and also control and privacy. So Cloudflare is used by many. I think it was said that about a third of the websites on the web use Cloudflare for all of these reasons. Well, now they're launching pay per crawl. And what this means is that the agents are going to have a wallet, because it's a system that will charge any AI as an agent or a bot for any content scraping. So it becomes a gatekeeper for the data needed for the coming wave of agents that will browse on our behalf. And what it does is it tags your site. If you're a user of Cloudflare, it tags your site with a paywall. And LLM bots coming by to get information have to pay per request or get blocked. And so news outlets and stock photo libraries are already using it as sort of the pilot wave of that. And it gives you leverage over your data for all these hungry agents and models out there. And you can either set a rate card, say, yeah, you can get my data, but you have to pay this amount, or you can block access entirely.
Yeah, I find it very interesting. I'm trying to game theory out what the long-term effects would be, but the biggest hurdle I see in implementation, because right now they say it requires it requires both sides to be in working with Cloudflare's new program. So the AI companies have to join as well as the site hosters. So we'll see. Cloudflare, like you said, Andy, Cloudflare has a huge share of sites and things like that. So they may have the juice to really push it through. And people, if more and more people have this concern about wanting to control the data on their sites, that is a great it's a great marketing push. It's like, oh well, Cloudflare offers something, but it does require both parties to be involved
Well,
with it. So we'll see what happens there.
I didn't see that.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. I'll have to look into that. It doesn't make sense to me on the surface, because if you don't currently have a paywall, right,
Mhm.
you don't have any restriction, you don't require a login or anything else, but you're publishing content, you don't have any control over what browsers can come and collect the data off of your website. And so if you then are using Cloudflare and you turn on this blocking routine and put up a paywall, then that paywall can be discriminating enough to say, okay, I know where the crawlers are from OpenAI. I know what they're, I know how to identify them, because Cloudflare has access to all that information as they're crawling the web. And I don't need any cooperation from OpenAI to block them. And I have a natural method for how they can do it. So I don't see that as being an architectural obstacle to the implementation for Cloudflare.
Yeah, and I think it's more of an issue of the pay side of things, because they have to run the transaction. I'm sure just the block everything option is probably their best selling, or is the best part of the sales pitch, but the pay per scraping thing is going to need them both on board to do that, or a new type of system.
Yeah,
Also,
I think Stripe will be very happy to put that
right. Exactly, the
that in
payment
place,
processor
and
tab.
the agents will know how to use it.
Yeah, I do have some thoughts on how they're going to identify
Yes.
an agent, when certain agents operate like the user themselves,
Mhm.
or a user themselves. So this is great, great, interesting move forward. I just not exactly sure how on implementation they're
Yeah.
going to go for it. Yeah.
Well, they've clearly thought it through, because
Oh,
they're
for
rolling it
sure,
out.
for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be interesting. I mean, there's a part of me that's really, really on the side of Cloudflare, which usually I'm not, but just to be able to, the idea of people being able to control their content, because it seems to be the kind of reaction to the methodologies of what all the foundational AI companies have taken, which is really, we're just going to use everything, and then hopefully the lawyers will all settle it out. And I mean, theoretically, they can just keep that going and going and going. So if there's a practical solution, a de facto, something that becomes de facto for that, that might actually work out in the end. Yeah. Okay, so Beth, you have another. Have you found another bit of treasure that you wish to dig up for me, mateys?
Yes. Okay. So this bit of treasure is about a psych rock band called the Velvet Sundown, and I don't really have a weave, but we're just gonna go with it because this is a very interesting story to me. And the story is that they rapidly reached 550,000 Spotify listeners within a period of about 2 weeks. And they have no live presence or real social media. They have a periodically used X account. Honestly, lots of people who doesn't have a periodically used X account, right? But they don't really have verifiable members. Their photos look really AI generated. Some of their photos are missing thumbs for their band things. And it's a pretty interesting story because one of the things is that Spotify initially showed them on algorithmic playlists like Vietnam War music and Good Mornings. and like California style ambient folk songs, the kinds of things that like you'd put on and then it would just blend into the background. So there's some thoughts about passive consumption, but the idea, I mean, people have been trying to do this. What this sort of seems is that this was more successful in a shorter period of time, therefore it got noticed. It signals a wave where AI generated music can like go into mainstream streaming backdoors. I don't even know that this is a mainstream. I don't know that this is accurately a backdoor, but listeners equal royalties, right? And it seems like one of those things that could conceivably um, that because of the tight timeline, it's showing us something that seems like it's happening across the board, just in a much slower way, right?
Mm.
And this is like there's a part of this that could easily turn into I made, $10,000 because Spotify doesn't pay very much. I made $10,000 in like for $1.50 in inference, check my model kind of thing out.
Yeah.
Um, because this, right? It's like AI generated passive income in a funky kind of way with slight creativity, but not enough to really mask it. The other thing is that they came out with 2 albums. I think released 2 albums within 2 weeks and are working on a third.
That was going to be my follow up.
And like as someone who like worked on songs that we released on album after 4 years when we worked on it, like we could have released other albums in that time period because we had a crap ton of songs, but there are real circumstances that could make this possible. But this is a story that's getting like it the story that found me came out yesterday, so it's just starting its wave of discussion, I think.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of questions that kind of, or paths that kind of lead off of what made this a success, or what kind of metrics we're measuring this as a success, because we know there has been the growing wave of what's apparently being called AI slop. Just quickly generated, just put out there as much as possible, right? It's all about volume. And I think this is just a couple of different technologies and processes or methods that have come together to really produce this kind of thing.
Right.
And there, if this is just the first example that people have really paid attention to, and
Right.
then there's just going to be more people jumping on the bandwagon trying to get this going. There'll be a certain point, well, Spotify will make adjustments, and I'm sure that's not going to be as good for
No.
creatives then. It's like, oh well, all channels will be AI slop kind of thing.
Well,
And
we've already seen Spotify. We've already seen stories of like, hey, not AI. I'm not
right,
AI, right? It was
right,
flagged as AI and therefore it got removed from all of the playlists that it was on, and their process, like I'm an actual human, is not seamless or easy, or right, like I mean prove you're not AI is potentially going to be a problem for all places as we move forward.
for
I don't
sure.
know.
Because I mean, I just saw a story from a TikToker who had their account flagged for a lot of other AI slop or repurposing slop type channels, and says, oh, well, my actual content got wrapped up with all of the illegal repurposing of my content, and they just did a massive ban,
Right.
because that's all algorithmic as well for the most part. And then I'm sure they're going to have a long road getting back to their original channel. Now, the one thing I want to point out is, because of this 2 week and having 550,000, right? 550,000
Mhm.
listeners. That really sounds like a phone farm to me. Um,
Mm.
those have existed for a while, and if you've got the overhead, that can get you that initial push. And we've seen from some general things about these platform, their platform algorithms is if you get the right kind of momentum in very early after you publish, the algorithm will take it and then start pushing it out there. So yeah, 2 weeks, 500,000 users, and generating two albums coming out of nowhere. Yeah, it it sounds like it's indicative of what will be rolling out.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Andy, do you have another story?
Yeah, I have another one. So OpenAI.
Mm-hmm.
OpenAI is addressing the enterprise market. And when I say enterprise, I mean big enterprise, because they have a new consulting arm that is charging enterprises a minimum of $10 million for an engagement in which they will customize AI models and they will do application development inside the corporation to achieve a AI transformation of the enterprise. So that's news that came from the information. So it's not actually a released program, but the information has access to sort of behind the scenes information. And that puts OpenAI in competition with companies like Palantir and Accenture, who
Mm-hmm.
offer this kind of large enterprise digital/AI transformation service. And to do this, OpenAI hired about a dozen what they call forward deployed engineers. So these are people who will actually come into the enterprise. They'll be working within the enterprise, but they're using all of OpenAI's capabilities. And they hired many of those people from Palantir. And that will help guide the customers through their design, model customization, and app development on site. But again, they have to put up at least $10 million for access to those OpenAI researchers back in the home offices of OpenAI and through the forward deployed engineers that will be on site to do the implementation. And OpenAI expects that will be a revenue stream for them that will be hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in the coming years.
Nice. Beth, do you have another story you want to talk about? I have a small one about Cursor.
I have another music story. And then I have one to go after you as well. Okay, so Songscription launched what is being talked about in the headlines as Shazam for sheet music, but it's actually cooler than that. It is Whisper for sheet music. It is, right? It's transcription. And if you have ever tried to take your music knowledge and be able to hear something and then put it down and make sheet music out of it, that is a specialized skill. And often what's happening in that is you're just trying to find out what they did in a certain section so that you can learn to play it or any of those things. Like you're not actually wanting the sheet music. The sheet music is a conduit. So this is very exciting. It's Songscription. And what I think is really interesting about it is that it has the potential to be very helpful for students or people who are wanting to understand like very specific like chord cadence or a particular run or any of those kinds of things. And I think for my interest, it doesn't even have to be completely accurate, right? Like in the same way that a transcription model can get like 99%, it's fine. I can understand what it didn't get correct. And this could even help like, okay, this kind of like check your work. Okay, I transcribed this. This is what I think I'm hearing. What are you hearing? And right now, for me, I have not found the conversational AI to have that conversation, because that would then be the next thing for me. Like, hey, I'm hearing this chord cadence, right? Am I right? Like, I want what are you hearing, AI? And AI is giving me, A, it's not listening to the chord cadence, and B, it's giving me the response that it thinks I want, because it's the most probable response based on those things, which is not necessarily the accurate response. But this starts to get exciting for me.
So
That
I have a couple of questions on that. So just clarify that what it does is it takes an audio music stream or
Mhm.
any audio recording and translates it into the notation, the musical
Right.
notation that we consider to be sheet music. So
Yes.
it's a visual display of the sequence of notes or the
Yes.
collection of chords, and it might be able to identify chords and the chord progression on the sheet, as you often see. You'll see the chord and with a little
Right.
finger thing for a guitar player.
Yep.
Um,
And
okay,
it
now
says
can
it's
it isolate one of the instruments?
It does not say that it can isolate one of the instruments, but
Which
there's
would be
actually a
very important,
new
right? I mean, if I want to learn my part to a song, let's say I'm a hacky bass player, I want to know what the bass is doing in this section.
uh-huh.
And it's being overwhelmed by horns and guitars and everything else. I can't really easily extract that from the audio. But an AI could isolate that particular uh, waveform and
Yep.
shape from the bass guitar and say, this is what the bass is doing, and here's the sheet music for it.
Right. There are AIs that will split out by instrument. It is not this, but you could conceivably do that and then
Oh,
take it to this.
so that's
When
audio to audio. It'll actually isolate
Yeah,
an instrument for. Okay, got it. Or
and
do
those
you
are
have a name for one of those?
those are becoming better. I did not pull that for this, but yes, it was in the same are the give me AI developments for music. So I will pop that in the Slack after the show. I'll go back and
All
find
right.
that. Gwen also had a really interesting idea. Could she make up a song, hum it, and it'll create sheet music? And I think so, because you could give it a YouTube link, right? And it
yeah.
will create. And when I say sheet music, it's like piano, right?
Mhm.
So it's less like I could learn the bass part, Andy, and more like I'm very old, so you used to go to Spencer's and buy the unauthorized book that told you how to play these things so that it sounded kind of like that song, but not entirely, like not each part. But it sort of pulled that all together into a piano part. So that
Mhm.
I think is more what this is. But it's very exciting.
Yeah. I'm already thinking of ideas how to combo some of the things, especially like what you were saying, Andy. If we can get the stems and we can then do the notation, and it can identify each of those things. And of course, this is the worst it'll ever be. So, I mean, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, we could get full sheet mode music. Now, does it do the reverse, or is this just the audio to text sort of thing?
So there are reverse ones, but it's like that connection hasn't been as seamless.
Hmm.
So one of the other hats that I have worn at various times is community choir, like a cappella community choir, bringing people in. They don't have to read sheet music. We're just teaching parts and going call and response back and forth. But there are people who want sheet music, so that's part of why this is interesting to me. And I think that we're nearing a place where those kinds of things are possible, but not quite. And we
Hmm.
use those kinds of things, right? So, like, here, give me the MIDI version of what this sheet music is, and then you get the thing that's like, right? And it's like, okay, nope, that's not gonna be
Well,
helpful. I can do
I've been
that, right? Like, I just did it. No, thank you very much.
Yeah, it would be it'd be interesting if it'll become bi-directional, if it adds other features, or maybe somebody will just build an app. They'll vibe code an app that will put all of those features together, and
Right.
automate their new Shazam.
Well, to a certain extent, this is what Carl was saying yesterday about MCP, right? Each of these pieces is able to be done by
Yeah.
AI right now. They're just
Right.
not all in the same AI. So maybe we're building at some point the music agent is going to go to this thing and say, okay, pull out the bass part and then go here and get the music for the bass part and then go here and play what the bass part's on, like all those things. I don't know.
Right. No, but I agree. It's interesting. We'll see how we'll see how that plays out. I'm sure there'll be an automation or some sort of app for that in the near future.
Yeah.
Okay, so switching gears a little bit, Cursor has launched their web app to manage your AI coding agents. So for Cursor customers, they've added a beyond the free tier, but this is also the $20 tier and whatnot. They recently added background agents, so you could spin up agents to do certain kind of work in the background while you were doing other things. So this web app now will allow you to orchestrate or control those background agents. So whoever's got access to background agents, you can now have access to the web app, so that you can set up these agents in I'm assuming a much easier time of setting them up and scheduling them and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see if this is a new base feature set, because a lot of the coding agents seem to copy each other in terms of their capabilities. So what we're seeing from these larger or more famous or popular coding agents are things or features that we see replicated in other agents. Replit, Cursor, Windsurf, those kinds of things. So anytime it makes it easier for me to orchestrate, plan, and implement any of these multi agents or anything like that, it makes it a lot. I look forward to it. Yeah.
Nice. And our chat for the win. Chat tells us that it is Suno that does the ability to separate the instruments and pull out the individual parts of the song.
Nice. All right. Do we have any last stories that people want to get to for today?
I do.
I have
Andy,
a
do you
bite-sized
also?
one? Yeah, I'll just do my last one. Actually, I need your help on it, Beth, because I think you have used Grammarly and you don't, and I haven't. Grammarly is a very competent AI writing assistant, and they've just acquired an email platform that's AI powered called Superhuman, and they're aiming through that acquisition to create a multi-agent AI productivity platform around your inbox.
Yeah,
Interesting.
that's exciting. I was actually at a demo day for every.to, and they have individual, because I'm a subscriber of every.to. They have individual pieces kind of like that as well. And they talked about like how they're moving, likely that they all play together and are able to do, because they have a repurposer, and then they have Cora is their inbox, is their email.
So okay, so for these apps that are focusing on one area of how AI can be applied, so in this case email, um I'm assuming their goal is just to provide a much better experience than what a foundational model can be plugged into, right? Is Google's Gemini, if you're using Gmail and you have Gemini and it's getting better and better, how long do you think Grammarly and those groups can stay, in front of it? Without going, well, if I got to pay $20 for Grammarly, or I have all of the features that I want from a Gemini, what's that pool, or how long do you think they'll have that pool?
I think this is sort of Pepsi Coke, right? I think
Oh,
people
okay.
get and it's probably more Pepsi Coke RC. Like I don't know. We've come to the end of my cola knowledge, right? Like there are many, many other cola flavors, I am sure. But I think people get comfortable with something, and particularly with writing, with feedback on your writing. Grammarly has a wide base of people who are comfortable with the way that they interact with Grammarly. I don't think that and those people are potentially already paying for it. I'm not sure
Hmm.
that Gemini is going to help with that. And for me, generic Gemini in the Gmail, it can never find the emails that actually exist. I don't know what
That's
your
true.
search thing is happening. Aren't you search Google? Right? Like, how are you not making that successful? But the other thing is the generic, like, make this shorter, write this better for me is not better.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
Um, All right. So I have a last story, and it's bigger. So I'm just going to reference it, and we may actually do a little bit of a show on it.
Okay.
But you know that we are huge fans of Sakana.
Mm-hmm.
Sakana.ai is a Japanese company, and they have unveiled basically something called ABMCTS, Adaptive Branching Monte Carlo Tree Search. And it's an inference time scaling algorithm that basically balances going wider and going deeper. So we talk about this in improv all the time, right? Like when you want to know more about like those are two ways of knowing more about something, right? Like if this is true, then what else is true in a wide kind of way?
Mm-hmm.
And if this is true, what does that mean? What does that mean that has happened before? What does that mean in terms of influences? Those kinds of things. That's in improv what we call going deeper. And this in their presentation when they showed it, they are, let me see if I can find it. They're talking about it in relation to evolutionary model merge, which is another thing that we talked about many times on the show. That came out in March 2024. So that was taking 3 models and putting them together, right? So they took Mistral 7B, Shisa 7B, and Wizard Math 7B, engaged in the evolutionary model merge, and it came out with another model, Evo LLM 7B.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is test time scaling and ensemble. O4 Mini, Gemini 2.5, DeepSeek R1, all coming together and then generating out basically the series, the inference, test time scaling, and collective intelligence, right? So now again in the evolutionary model merge, you have the task, you go to that model and it gives you an output. This is, you have the task, you go to this ABMCTS, and it does it like engages all 3 models and then comes out with the output. So it's like mixing to create better models from existing ones. And sorry, the evolutionary model merge was a technique for mixing to create better models from existing
Mm-hmm.
ones. Now what they're doing is mixing to use frontier models. And
Mm-hmm.
so what we've talked about in terms of this is having like a agent foreman or foreperson, right, who's going to engage this. This is another approach. This is their like, this is how this is going to happen kind of approach. And just because the Daily AI Show is incredibly big fans of Sakana, I sort of feel like when they put out something that says, "Hey, we did something really cool," I'm yep, right. Like that's all I need to know. I'd like to know
Right.
more now.
Yep.
You've already had a great track record, so
and how can we do it ourselves?
Right.
We'd like to see if we can experiment and produce
Right.
our own combinations.
And
Yeah.
this is another great thing about Sakana. So it is a paper. There is an algorithmic implementation at on GitHub, right? They've released that, and the code is also released on GitHub, right? Yeah. I'm not even gonna try to say all those letters with dashes because that's not gonna mean anything to y'all. Go and we'll put the links to all this in the Slack. And you can go read those letters and dashes for yourself. But the idea behind this is that it's possible to read the paper and then go and implement it yourself.
Nice. All right, Andy, you have anything else that you want to cover today? You're good? Okay, so I'm going to close up with two short stories. One is Google is now releasing all of the main features, or the really exciting features from a lot of the Google Labs, in particularly like Notebook LM, into a version for their education package. So Google has always had Google Classroom. They put together a bunch of different tools specifically for teachers and various educators to, to help with students. Services that might be useful in teaching. Notebook LM is now being added into that package, as well as some learnings and other AI features that will help teachers um, develop courses, develop learning programs, fill in a lot of those AI gaps that the education system and AI might not be gelling on, and offering, I guess, more options to get AI into, at least on the teacher side of things. There's a few things for students as well. They've expanded some of the classroom options for how to implement AI with teaching the kids, or how the kids can use AI and things like that. So, interesting, or good move towards AI adoption and AI literacy from the Google side of things. I know in the ed tech market, there's always just been big waves of whatever new, you know, um, new ed tech feature has come out. A lot of it was a few years ago was getting remote classrooms going. Other is more content. I worked on a project that provided a lot of educational or and entertainment content for access by teachers to help teach. There you go, and our ideal customer profile right there, wanting to know more about edutech. So maybe we'll see more we'll see more AI used in the classroom from those institutions that are using Google Classroom. Now, I wanted to end today on one last story: AI in science, science. And so, in AI and science news today, we have quantum computers just beat classical ones exponentially and unconditionally. So, from the folks of University of Southern California, they have developed a method to increase, or I should say decrease. We talked about a story, I think, last week, where some researchers had created a way to reduce the amount of noise which could cause errors. And errors seem to be like the number one thing in quantum computing that they're trying to get rid of, so that they can, replicate their output and or their productivity and things like that. But apparently, what these University of Southern California team did is they implemented four main steps. The first three um, were all pretty straightforward, logical improvements to existing methods to improve the quantum computing output or performance, right? And those are things like finely tuning the hardware, off and the algorithms that are built for it to run the software or run the computer, those kinds of things. But with their last method, they're able to breach that unconditional parameter, and that apparently seems to be that was the really tough nut to crack for quantum computing versus classical computing, right? In certain conditions, quantum computing would easily outperform classical computing, right? But not unconditionally. So with their methods that they're able to implement, they can now, no matter the condition, outperform classical ones, classical computing. Now, this does get into the really nitty gritty of quantum computing, and this is, of course, cutting edge. When we're talking about the kind of science that's involved in into this development, and we won't see this as practical users anytime soon, and by that, 2 or 3 years. But it's really exciting to see that these hurdles, that these technologies, which a number of years ago just sounded futuristic, we're seeing these hurdles being overcome one after another, getting us to the point where quantum computing in just a few years is going to be the default major computing device or major compute device. So we'll see what comes out of that. And so that's how I wanted to wrap up, is with a nice little AI and science story. Thank you, everyone, for joining the live stream. We always appreciate it, and we love that you're so conversive in our chat. You folks are great, and anyone who's watching this later, thank you so much for taking the time. And again, if you haven't already, please bell, like, subscribe. And if you want to continue the conversation, join our community at dailyaishowcommunity.com. That'll get you right into the Slack community, and we can continue the conversation there. Lots of great people talking up a storm about AI in that space. We do have some great shows coming up for Thursday and Friday, so we hope that you'll join us for the rest of the week. And of course, keep an eye out for the Conundrum on Saturdays and the newsletter on Sundays. All right, I think that's about it. Thank you, everybody. Aloha.